Okay, welcome back to our series of work session meetings related to the 2020 budget, 2021 budget, but really review of the year in 2020. And today we have scheduled the county attorney's office, so we turn it over to David Levitt.
Thank you. I know that 2 hours sounds like a long time, and I'll try to be interesting, though I can't promise that. However, with only 2 hours, I have to do a bit of obviously I've had to make some judgment calls as to what to include and what not to include. I'm happy to concede that there's a real good possibility that what I have included may not include everything that you may want me to hear, and if that's the case, I'm happy to supplement that either online or offline at any given time. I'd like to start out, if possible, by just giving you a visual of our office. Our office is responsible by statute for two primary areas. Number one, I am the elected prosecutor, which means that every criminal case of a serious nature, every felony that occurs in Utah County, or any Class A, and virtually all Class A misdemeanors that occur in Utah County flow to my office. That's the first large heading. The second large heading is I'm the civil advisor to all of county government. And so this chart just simply gives a visual of what my office looks like. The civil side of my functions are encapsulated on the far left of the screen under the civil division. I have 7 lawyers that help me carry out those functions, and then 4 support staff. The remaining 4 divisions, help me with my functions as the public prosecutor. I have a screening division, a criminal division, a community services division, and an investigations division. My intention is to go through each one of these and to explain briefly what we do in each division, why we do it, how we're trying to get better, and try to suggest the metrics that we use to try and improve upon that. So diving first into, here's a smaller version of that organizational chart that just simply indicates the divisions and not the employees within those divisions, which is interesting, which is an important function or thing to note, and that is lawyers are organized multiple. The same lawyer can be in multiple divisions because the divisions are organized by topic and by task, not by people. And so members of the screening division will also be part of the community services division, and members of the criminal division will also be part of the community services division. The one exception, generally speaking, is the civil division, which by and large is a standalone law office to take care of the civil needs of the county. Feel free to interrupt either with questions for those who are in the room, or by letting me know on Zoom if you have questions. I'd like to start with the civil division, which is headed by David Shawcroft, our civil division chief. The civil division is divided into 4 subsets, into 4 teams. Civil Team 1 handles administration, policy and risk management matters. Civil 2 deals with community and development and community services. Team 3, public health, health and human services and public safety. And Team 4, internal affairs and fiscal services. Going to Team 1, Team 1 has primary responsibility for advising the county commission, for reviewing and revising county policies, for keeping the county code, up to date, for legislative issues that occur, with the county, for this, keep making sure that the other teams are functioning appropriately, the issuances of bonds, the municipal building authority, the investment and benefits committee, the county risk manager, claims manager, insurance trust coordinator, and the litigation coordinator. Dave Shawcroft is the leader of that team, as the civil division chief. Team 2 handles everything related to public works, community development, planning commission, board of adjustments, surveyor, recorder, annexations, zoning, all grandma requests, the agricultural protection advisory board, the weed control board, the county fair, convention center, the extension service, historic preservation commission, career service council, special service districts, and economic development. Now, obviously, many of these items are not as large in nature as far as the time that it takes than others. Some of them, for example, the Board of Adjustments, grandma, et cetera, have much larger requirements than does, for example, our work with the Career Service Council or the Extension Service. Team 3 represents the sheriff. Is our responsibility to be the legal advisor to the sheriff's department. And they also handle all the grandma, advising the sheriff on grandma requests, and is also the claims manager for the sheriff. They also advise the Major Crimes Task Force, this team does, as does providing legal advice of an operational nature to the Justice Court, for emergency and disaster services to the Public Defender's Office as far as the negotiating of that contract, which is important to note that we have a strict division between the Public Defender's representation in the Civil Division with our Criminal Division, who more often than not are meeting the Public Defenders in court on the criminal matters. Constables, Health Department, Substance Abuse, State Hospital competency hearings, and Wasatch Behavioral Health, and the Children's Justice Center. Team 4 handles all of human resource issues, information systems. They represent the clerk auditor, and they also handle grandma appeals before the county commission. They represent the Accident Review Board. They handle parking appeals, health department appeals. They represent the assessor, the treasurer, standardized agreements countywide. They also help with community development block grants. They represent through the clerk auditor's office, the purchasing agent, the property tax officer. They represent the property tax officer through the Board of Equalizations. We also appear in bankruptcies that affect the county, also with centrally assessed properties with the State Tax Commission. We handle the May tax sale. We also provide legal advice to the Tourism and Tax Board and the Utah Valley Convention and Visitors Bureau and the Clerk Auditor. Now, that's a lot of things to read off, but I could encapsulate it really in one statement, and that is that the Civil Division is an essential element of every aspect of county government. We find ourselves dealing with every office of county government because every office of county government has, of course, legal issues. Our budget in 2020 was $1 million for the Civil Division, was $1,881,439. Question is, what is it that we do for that budget? Well, we drafted, reviewed, and approved, and went through the process with either the county commission or the relevant county office of 747 contracts. We discussed, researched, debated, and went through the approval and publishing process with the commission and the clerk auditor of 22 ordinances. We did the same in and these are projected numbers based on, it's October, but these are projected numbers through the end of the year. We also handled the discussion, the drafting, the discussion, the approving, et cetera, of 162 resolutions. We appeared in 751 mental health civil commitment hearings. Now, this is separate from our criminal code case requirements. This is handled from Ben Van Noy in our civil division because civil commitments are civil in nature and not criminal. We had 751 separate civil commitment hearings. We appeared 115 times in bankruptcy cases. We processed 848 grandma requests countywide. So anytime anyone wants to know what's going on in Public Works, anytime any one of the ungoverned public something in Public Works or the assessor's office, the auditor's office, the grandma request comes to us, and we handle 848 of those requests.
Dave, is that number up this year from last, or is it about the same?
I can tell you very quickly, unless David Shawcroft can tell me more quickly.
It's, we expect it to be close to the same.
Thanks.
We have seen increases in past years, but the current, if it continues as projected, it will be close to the same this year as last year.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I want to go back to that previous slide. Don't know what happened to it. We had 848 grandma requests processed. We only had 7 grandma appeals. I think that's significant because what it demonstrates, it does not demonstrate that we grant all of the requests. What it demonstrates is that whether we grant them or whether we don't grant them, the vast majority of the time, the people who are requesting them are either satisfied with the fact, with our decision, either because we have articulated why we can't give it to them or that we in fact gave it to them. And I think that this is a number that demonstrates, quite frankly, the good work of the grandma people in the civil division. We also handled 11 appeals before the State Tax Commission of residents of Utah County or property owners within Utah County, probably stated more accurately, that appealed their property tax valuations here in Utah County. We worked with the county commission and the county assessor in 54 property tax case adjustments in 2020. We dealt with 4 industrial revenue bonds, and the total number of all these matters, I didn't put them in a slide because it's really not representative of everything that of the entire picture, because one matter can take an hour and another matter can take 3 months. But we had 2,729 separate matters come through the civil division. Now our budget in 2021 is $1,536,381, and that is a net decrease of $345,000 over last year. And the difference comes from adjustments to salaries and benefits and some differences in time-limited employees. We don't expect to have a different workload than we in 2021 than we have in 2020. I would note that as is fairly widely known, Utah County is soon to be, in the coming years, the largest county in the state of Utah. And while we are managing in as responsible a way as we possibly can with our current staffing needs, as the county grows, this is in the future will be something that we'll have to discuss, because, as I said, as county government grows to meet the needs of a wider population, every office in county government depends upon the county attorney's office. Yes.
Just to clarify on that, you're saying that the request that you are putting forward is a $345,000 decrease.
No, what I'm saying is
Civil division budget request.
and maybe the number that the phrase request ought to be amended. The 1536,381 comes from HR, or whoever gave us, that number didn't generate with us. That
salaries and benefits.
So is that
Right.
an adjustment in benefits because of the, when we adjusted benefits across the county, we used to give every single person, kind of a family plan, and also the benefits adjustments were more accurate, and that's where we're seeing that decrease. I'm just curious.
I imagine it's something like that, because we have the same number of employees.
Yeah.
And it might come in reduction in rent, in the internal service fund, you know, from my mind.
It's gotta be a
It's gotta be
change to
something
the
like
internal
that.
service fund and
Right.
probably the rent.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's not salaries and benefits.
Right. So, the bottom line is, we don't view it necessarily from our perspective as a reduction, in our budget. But it is on paper, either because of the internal service fund or because of changes in benefits. Of note, of course, 2020 has been the year that no one expected. We have spent 1,166 hours in the civil division of COVID-related legal work, which from our belief ought to be something that is recouped by the county through the CARES Act funding, though that obviously would not be the final decision on that would not rest with my office. And the other caveat is that it's impossible to know, of course, what 2021 will bring with regard to COVID.
And of course, everything on that COVID has been documented in, and the codes and everything, so it's,
That's
it
right.
has been, I know
Right.
it has been, I'm just
Sure.
putting that out there.
Absolutely, we keep real close track of that, thank you. Does anyone have any questions on the civil side of this presentation before I shift gears and move into the criminal? All right. I'm running two PowerPoints here, so I want to just make sure the PowerPoint on my computer is matched up with the PowerPoint. Okay. As the elected public prosecutor, under the rules of evidence, or the rules of ethics, I am to be a minister of justice. And as the county attorney, I'm the chief law enforcement official for the county, and as such, by extension, the chief minister of justice for county government, or for the nearly 700,000 people that reside here in Utah County. I operate from the philosophy that a minister of justice is a minister of fairness, and that my role is, by and large, to protect the community. As I have grown in this position as the Utah County Attorney, and as I have grown in the position through my nearly 30 years of criminal justice experience, I've come to really take issue with the phrase criminal justice. Because regardless of what we do in the system, we can't unmurder a murder victim. We'll never unrape a rape victim. We'll never financially undestroy someone who's been financially devastated through the act of another. Really, and on the flip side of that, we will never, if we're looking at justice, we never can go back and create an ideal environment for the defendant to have a stable home background or a good educational background, or to have his or her illnesses diagnosed, so that, you know, if they had been known, or had they had the right opportunities, they would have committed these crimes. That would be true justice. to be able to, you know, knowing with everything on a level playing field, to be able to do something about that. The reality is that achieving justice is something that is way above the pay grade of any county attorney, any police officer, any mortal. And so in defining my role as quote-unquote a minister of justice, I have settled on a different phrase, and that is my role is to protect our community. Because I can protect our community much more effectively if I understand that we can never achieve full justice. And so I operate on the presumption, when we talk about protecting our community, I operate under the presumption that we are free, that we've been given inalienable rights by our Creator, and that government should only regulate the kind of conduct which truly hurts people. If someone's not hurting someone, then the best way for me to protect society is to stay out of their way. And so that's the guiding principle that we have used in trying to refocus the criminal justice system, which I'll continue to call the criminal justice system, despite my disclaimer. But we need to understand that in balancing community protection and in balancing punishment, we need to understand that only 10% of our criminal defendants are violent people. Meaning, historically speaking, we put people in jail because we had to keep them away from us because they were hurting us, and they also, it served as a function of punishment. But 90% of those we prosecute could receive a punishment that didn't involve incarceration. That's something that has guided us as we move forward. Now, the goal is to change our model. Why do we need to change our model? Well, 75% of people who go to prison are returning to prison, having failed on parole. A large number of people we prosecute, I would say a majority of the people we prosecute, will return and reoffend. And rather than saying what our system currently does is look at the offender and say, look, what is the offender doing wrong here? What I'm doing now is saying, okay, it's fine to focus on the offender, but let's focus on us. What are we doing wrong that could change this equation? And that has persuaded me to simply, in an unapologetic way, say, I am here to reform this criminal justice system, not only in Utah County, but to use the reforming of the Utah County criminal justice system to reform the state of Utah and, by extension, the United States of America, because we are, in fact, one whole. And I want to stop right here and just simply say that I can't do this without the help of a supportive county commission. And I have felt that support. I've had that support, and I want to thank you for that support, and simply to say that when you start a process to transform something as problematic as the criminal justice system, it has to happen incrementally and at the same time. While that doesn't make any sense, it's very much, I compare this to people, when people ask me what in the world I mean by that, I give them the example of the Salt Lake Airport. The Salt Lake Airport Authority built the world's most advanced airport at the same time that on a daily basis, hundreds and hundreds of flights were taking off and departing. And so they had to build the new while sustaining the old, and that's very much what we're trying to accomplish in this criminal justice system reform. Now, the American Bar Association last year named the Utah County Attorney's Office as one of 6 prosecution offices across the nation most likely to change the paradigm in criminal justice reform, or in the criminal justice system, most likely to change the paradigm. That's not excuse me, that's not simply a function of who the county attorney is. It's also a function of people who have had to change and grow and expand as we've learned new ways and faced the real music of what works with us and what doesn't work. But not insignificantly, it also includes a willing county commission who has been willing to take a step with us in the direction of these reforms, because in reality, we all want the same things. We want safe communities, we want to maintain our freedoms, and we want a system that works. So I applaud you and thank you for that. Yeah. Moving on, we have I just fell into the trap of reading from my own PowerPoint and realizing that I hadn't given you this slide either as I went. But the goal, of course, is to change our model. We want to change the model from simply a model of punishment to one that is of community protection. And that community protection will occur when our punishments are in line with something that will help achieve that goal. Our first division in the criminal division, in the criminal justice division, is the investigations division, and this is headed up by Patty Johnston, who is the first female police chief in Utah County's history. She's a veteran of 26 years in law enforcement. Most, if not all of which, comes from, occurred in Utah County. Now, I don't put a lot of slides in this presentation for the investigations division, primarily because the nature of the investigations division is more private. Their techniques are such that are investigative techniques that are not intended for public consumption, and so this is the only slide that I have for the investigations division, but I will give you a verbal of what their role is. The function of the investigations division is to assist the Utah County Attorney to better protect our residents and by assisting the prosecutors in carrying out our responsibilities. When cases come to us from the 20-some-odd police agencies in our jurisdiction, those cases come from agencies that all have different capacities. You have the Utah County Sheriff's Office that has a lot of capacity. You have Provo and Orem that have a lot of officers and have a lot more infrastructure. Then you have police agencies like the Salem Police Department or the Saratoga Springs that are very capable, very devoted, very experienced officers, but their budgets don't allow them to have the resources necessary to follow a case through both for the investigation and for the prosecution. And so my five investigators, I've had to, in trying to redefine what criminal justice looks like in Utah County, I've redefined their roles. Historically speaking, the investigations division of the county attorney's office was created for officer-involved critical incident investigations. So that when an officer was involved in the shooting or there was a death at the jail, that police agency would call the county attorney's office, the attorney's investigation team would go out and conduct an investigation into that. They'd bring that back then to me, and I would make a decision over whether there be criminal charges or not against the police officer involved. Now, the move away from that occurred for the following reasons. Number one, we recognize the competency and the capacity and the objectivity of our local law enforcement. Now, if there's a shooting in Provo, we don't have Provo investigate themselves, but we have collaborated with the Utah County Sheriff's Office and the local police agencies to create a protocol, that has a protocol team that does not have active investigations going on by the county attorney's office. Rather, it provides support and assistance to the protocol team by way of one of our investigators to assist, and also one of our deputies to answer legal questions. But the investigation is conducted by this protocol team, which is an assembly of every police agency in the county. That frees my office, my investigations division office up. And I think it's sound for good policy reasons, because I believe, from a policy standpoint, that prosecutors generally have too much power. In Utah County, I can investigate anyone I want to investigate. I prosecute anyone I feel I should prosecute. I give a plea bargain or not to them. And it seems to me that structurally speaking and fundamentally speaking, there's a problem if I'm making the prosecution call on a police officer and I'm the one conducting the investigation. And so, for the purposes of creating greater public confidence in this process, we have moved the primary role of the investigations function out, or OICI, out of my investigations to the protocol team. And now we just assist, and then I still make the call on those investigations. And we still feel like we have a safety net for if something needed to be investigated further, we could certainly do that. But what that has allowed us to do is it's allowed us to create specializations, particularly to benefit the smaller agencies that don't have that capacity. We have made tremendous strides in our digital forensics. We have, we can do amazing things with cell phones and with finding locations and et cetera, et cetera. And we also have moved into the area of investigating and prosecuting criminal law support cases. And, to me, a violent crime there are three kinds of violence. Number one, there's physical violence, which we all know of what that means. Number two is there's emotional violence, and quite frankly, the vast majority of sex cases against adults and children aren't physical, don't create physical scarring, they create emotional scarring. And emotional violence is among the most traumatizing of all violence. But then there's also financial violence. Criminal law support falls into the category of financial violence. When we have several thousand custodial parents, mothers and fathers in Utah County, who are owed tens of thousands of dollars in child support, and the law makes it a felony, yet no one prosecutes it because we don't recognize that as something high enough on our list to prosecute. Well, from my perspective, it's a crime that we need to prosecute, and so I have refocused my investigative division to be to take a laboring oar in that. The investigators also work with individual prosecutors. A prosecutor will be working on a case for a trial or in preparation for a next hearing, and there'll be something that will come up that needs to be looked into. It's difficult given the workload of the police agency that investigated that to drop everything and go look up a simple fact that needs to be that we need to know by 4 o'clock this afternoon, for example. And the investigations do that. So they do case follow-up. They conduct interviews for us. They locate witnesses for us. They investigate separate allegations that flow out of the primary case. When case A comes to us and we look at this and we start realizing that there might be another case from that, they follow up on that. There's a whole laundry list of things that they do, and quite frankly, if I had to say that there was one area of my office that is underrepresented and resourced, it's the investigations division, because we simply need more human resource to be able to. But that's not something that is in this year's budget request. That's just something that I'm discussing for the future. Any questions on investigations before I move on?
So, can I just clarify, because you said something, and I want to give you a chance to clarify it. You're talking about, physical and emotional harm. I would assume that on the sexual side, that it's a dual.
Absolutely.
Because it almost sounded like you were saying that it was more emotional than physical, but you're saying that it's, you have both going on there at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, there are violent sexual assaults.
Yeah.
And that, that, from which people die, that injures people, and,
Yeah.
physically in a real, there's also date rapes. And there are rapes that, a date rape will provide no physical evidence of an injury, but it will traumatize primarily a woman, who are the victims of that, forever. And so, yeah, thank you for the clarification. Anything else on this? All right. I'm going to move on now. Our screening division. Our screening division is headed by Dale Ayer. Dale is a very experienced criminal justice lawyer. He was the Sevier County attorney for 12 years in Sevier County, and a deputy prior to that. The screening division I will say, from my perspective, is the most important division in my office. Why is it the most important division in my office? Because the screening division is the division that makes the decision over what kind of criminal charge will occur, and there's not a more consequential decision in a person's life than when a prosecutor is deciding what charge to file or not to file. It also obligates millions of dollars in governmental funding, because when we file a charge, it now has created a financial obligation for the district court. It's created a financial obligation for the public defenders. It's created a financial obligation for the probation department, for the treatment centers, and for the jail. And screening is something that, by and large, has been, in my opinion, and I include myself in this through my years of criminal justice experience, my years of prosecution, screening division has been one of the largest causes of the failure of the criminal justice system, because prosecutors have not realized their responsibility to be the keepers of the gate of the criminal justice system, and to ensure that those that go in for the right reasons, and that those that stay out for the right reasons. My screening division is tasked with the assignment of answering the broad question: what does society need for its protection? Number one, will a criminal charge protect society? If not, why are we going to charge it? Now, typically speaking, we say, well, because we have to punish this person. We need to realize that every time we punish a person, we punish society. And we have to move beyond the notion of simply punishment for punishment's sake. I will tell you that the best example of this is with our police officers on low-risk offenses. These police officers are more capable and more able to assess on the ground, in many instances, what needs to be written up and what needs to be flowed through the system and what doesn't. A very small example of that is speeding. On any given street, on any given day, 95 or 96% of the people going down that road driving a car will be speeding. And if the police officer chose to keep a radar gun right there and it hit every car as they went down the street, they'd spend their life writing speeding tickets. And they'd clog the system, and they wouldn't be available to protect the citizenry when the other important matters come up. And that's what I am saying we need to be doing in the screening division in the county attorney's office, is learning from the police model of learning learning when to pick our battles, if I can say it that way. So, you know, will punishment, you know, if we charge someone, number two, what punishment will best serve to deter future criminal offenses? And number three, community protection necessarily includes preserving the system that our founders established. I'll speak more on that later, but community protection is far more than knowing who to prosecute. It's knowing when not to prosecute, to preserve the integrity of our criminal justice.
So, one question on this
Yeah.
one is, I don't know if you're gonna go into it later, but on number two, how does that, because, you know, you're talking about the screening division right now.
Right,
And so your screening division decides, you know, should we file charges?
right.
And then it seems like what you're saying is too, if you are, what punishment? But you don't really decide that at the time you file charges,
No.
right? Or how much discretion, maybe you just
Well-
speak to that of,
I'll be happy to. And actually, I'll get to that. Let me reserve that, and because I think that if when I think I've answered it, I haven't answered it, I'll come back and take another crack at it. Like I said, the screening process is the most important process in my office, and it's the process for the, one moment. For the individual, and I've already mentioned this, and when I say individual, I'm talking not only the defendant, but I'm also talking the victim. The decisions we make there are critical, and this is what I have written in the policy manual of the county attorney's office. The foundation of a house is rarely seen. However, it's the most crucial part of the house as it serves to hold it in place. Moreover, a foundation that is level, plumb, and square ensures that the rest of the structure has a chance of being built straight. A foundation built to a lesser standard gives no chance to build an entirely straight house. Screening is to criminal prosecution what a foundation is to a house. It ensures that the prosecutor has sufficient admissible evidence to sustain a conviction prior to its filing. It diligently seeks to understand the microcosms of every case in order to charge it correctly or not to charge it at all. It learns something of the accused, it learns something of the victims and the public's need for protection. Screening, if done right, ensures that the criminal case from the inception is level, plumb, and square. The filing of a criminal charge, particularly a sex offense against an individual, changes an individual's lives forever, with consequences that can never be entirely known. Moreover, the filing of a criminal charge affects the lives of so many individuals beyond the defendant, whose identities we likely can never know. What is a victim, for example? Certainly the rape victim is a victim, but what a victim is someone who hasn't done anything wrong. And something bad happens to that person, despite the fact that they haven't done anything wrong. Well, when you look at the broad sense of what a victim are the children of the defendants, the spouses of the defendants, the employers of the defendants, and the statutory victims themselves. And so the criminal justice system needs to take all of this into account if we're truly going to protect society. And because of the seriousness of this is what I have written to my lawyers. Quote, "It is easy to allow our screening discussions to descend into jocularity, given the frequency with which decisions are made regarding cases. However, while humor is appropriate and welcomed, insensitive jocular or bantering is not." And that's what I'm trying to do with my screening division, is to emphasize the importance of this process. Now, I want to illustrate to you what I will call traditional screening versus the redemptive justice screening. Traditional screening focuses on maximizing the criminal charge. Now, this isn't just the Utah County Attorney's Office. This is, generally speaking, prosecutors' offices across the country. Maximizing the criminal charge, meaning charge as high as the evidence supports and charge as many counts as the evidence supports. Now, people call that overcharging, and that offends prosecutors because overcharging to a prosecutor is different than overcharging to the rest of society. A prosecutor will look at that and say, well, I had evidence to charge that, so it's not overcharging. A society member will say, well, you don't need to charge that to protect the society, the community, so that's overcharging. And so we struggle with the definitional problem of what overcharging is, and so I've labeled it here, charge as high as the evidence supports and as many charges as the evidence supports. That's the traditional model. And it's based on securing a plea bargain. If I charge as high as I can and as broad as I can, then it's going to be more easy, it's going to be easier for me to get a plea bargain. Now, there's fundamental problems with that that I'll discuss in a little while, but the traditional process also recognizes that the case comes in from the police, it lands on one lawyer's desk, and the lawyer, he or she will look at the law and look at the facts and come up with the highest charges they can, and then send it on. And so it's filed by one prosecutor. It results in essentially, the net effect of that is having 25 different county attorneys. That was because everybody has their own judgment, everybody has their own preferences, everyone has their own prejudices and their own biases. And that's what comes out of the traditional screening process. That's a large reason why we have 2.3 million people in American jails, 90% of whom are not violent, because we have not taken as prosecutors the screening process seriously. Now, I would not have been able to change the screening process without the help of the county commission, who funded additional lawyers for me. The redemptive screening process is focused on what will protect society the most. It focuses on punishing the offender, realizes the fact, that punishing the offender also punishes society. Let me give you an example on that. In 1985, if Tanner Ainge and I had gone down to Cedar City and committed a felony in Cedar City, we would have paid our debt to society in Cedar City, and then we could have moved to wherever we wanted to in the world and gotten on with our life. Because we paid it, we went on, and the technology wouldn't track us wherever we went. Now, technology is great, and it's also bad in this sense, because if Tanner Ainge and I committed a felony in Provo, Utah in 2020, we couldn't go to Bangor, Maine and start a new life, because that felony will arrive with us before we ever get there. That means that when we arrive in Bangor, Maine, we won't get a job, we won't get an apartment, and our prospects for a successful life have been reduced. And when we do that, we damage society. That's easy to see, I believe. And so we focus then in redemptive justice screening on charging only the conduct that is necessary to either A, change behavior, and B, protect society. It's also based on eliminating the plea bargain system. Now, the prior model was based on being able to get a plea bargain. We're basing our screening so that we eliminate plea bargains. Why do we eliminate plea bargains? We eliminate plea bargains because our founders gave us a constitution wherein cases were decided by evidence, by juries. The founders never gave government the power to decide the guilt or innocence of a fellow human being. They gave that power, they reserved that power to themselves through the jury process. Well, over time, we have virtually eliminated the jury trial system in favor of plea bargains. What that means is, it's something that should scare everybody who's affected by a prosecutor, which is everybody. What that means is that 99 times out of 100, I, as the elected county attorney, don't have to prove the allegations that I make. That is fundamentally something that needs to be changed, and I refer to this not as criminal justice reform. I refer to this as criminal justice restoration, restoring it to what it was previously. We get there because it results in having, what we do results in having one county attorney's voice rather than 25 different county attorneys' voices. How do we do that? Well, here's what we consider when we should file a case. We look at the admissible evidence. We look at the offender's prior criminal history, extraneous facts of the case which may not be admissible, but which give us context to whether the case should be charged. I'll give you some examples of that in a minute. What are the defenses? What are the effects on all the victims, not just the statutory victim? What are the defendant's constitutional rights? The overall circumstances of the defendant, including whether the defendant's prospect of success in society will be benefited by participation in the criminal justice system. That's a relevant question if we're going to protect society. Under the current model across the country, that really is largely ignored. The criminal justice system's ability to handle a case effectively when reviewing the totality of the other cases currently in the system. The screening, I like to analogize the screening division as being similar to the bouncer at a nightclub. You know, the fire marshal says you can only have so many people in this nightclub, and if you have more, it may be a great entertainment, it may be a great time, but there are dangers there lurking if you have too many people in it. It's the same with the criminal justice system. You know, we have treatment centers, we have probation, we have public defenders, we have judges, we have prisons, we have all these tools. But if we overload those tools, to use another analogy, it goes from being a nice food court at a mall that can handle a potpourri of different people ordering here and there, and it changes it from that to having, for example, 7 school buses of high school wrestlers showing up that all want to be fed at the same time. That's our current situation. Now, that's what we're trying to change. So the screening division seeks to answer these questions. Is a criminal charge the best solution? If not, what do we do with the case? If so, do we enhance the case because he's a danger? Do we reduce the case? And the other relevant question is, where do we file it? We file it in the district court, we file it in the justice court. Now, I've told you about the effect of a felony. So I'll just simply say, we recognize that we protect the community by looking at the micro of each case. Sometimes we protect society by charging a felony. Sometimes we protect society by not charging a felony. So to go, Tanner, to what you were saying, when we get in the screening division, what occurs is we have 6.5 lawyers in our screening division. Every one of them will take a case, they'll screen it based on the standards that we've set forth. They'll come to a daily meeting that occurs every morning at 10 o'clock. And it becomes, instead of being a decision that is made in the privacy of one lawyer's own office, it's more like a legislative committee or a county commission meeting, wherein the lawyers discuss it, and they bat it back and forth, and they discuss, so what should happen with this? What should the sentence be? And if they come up with a feeling what that sentence should be, they put it in the notes, so the prosecuting attorney down the line can see that. It's very much a holistic approach to what will benefit society. It's not just, what are the facts, what are the law, boom, let's move it on to the next. Because this becomes the focal point of where we send it. Do we send him home without charges? Do we send it to the district court? Do we send it to the justice court? Do we send it to the pre-filing diversion program, which I'll talk about in just a few moments. Here's how it's changed our practice. These are specific cases. These are 3 specific cases that I'm going to show you from this office. Retail theft case. A defendant steals a chapstick valued at $2.69 from a local store. And because that person has at least 2 prior convictions of theft, he was arrested for felony theft and incarcerated on $5,000 bail. Now, under the traditional system, this office charged that person with the felony in the district court. He stayed in jail, because he couldn't make bail, and he'll be in jail for several weeks, if not months, while the case resolves. Under the current system, we file this in the Utah County Justice Court as a Class B misdemeanor theft, pursuant to House Bill 300, which was a bill that you're all aware of, and since I'm speaking to you, not the general public, I won't belabor that. And from our perspective, the County Justice Court has every tool it needs to punish that offender, to find out what's happening, rather than clogging up the district court. Next case. A protective order violation. The father was charged with violating a protective order when he learned that his son was in the emergency room, and he called his ex-wife, who had a protective order against him, to find his son, and that violated the protective order. Now, prior to our policy changes, that case would have been resulted in a felony charge of violation of a protective order. That has happened. Now, that's, fact scenarios like that have happened dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of times, where we create a felon without context because the law says it's a felony. Under the new system, the screening division declined charges because there was no criminal intent to violate the statute or the protective order, although it was a technical violation of the statute. Next case. Drug possession. The defendant was in a room with 3 people when police officers entered and found several glass pipes. The defendant admitted that one of the pipes was hers, and since it had residue of methamphetamine, she was arrested on a third-degree felony because she had prior convictions that were several years old. In the new system, under the old system, the defendant would have been charged in the district court with a felony, and it would have continued that cycle that we are also familiar with. Under the new system, because she didn't have any actual meth in her possession, and she had already received services in the district court, and was receiving services in the district court for the prior cases, we concluded not to file the charges, because to do so would simply clog the system and not get us the benefit that we wanted. What does it cost? Well, under the old system, we had 25 lawyers with an average salary and benefit of $115,000 each. They spent 20% of their time collecting, each of them, screening cases, which gives you a grand total of $575,000. Under the new system, we have 6.5 lawyers. They make the same amount of money. They spend 100% of their time they spend 100% of their time in screening cases, and that comes to a total that costs us out of pocket up front $747,500. But in the long run, the net effect is it saves us money, because rather than doing it the old way and sending everything through to the district court, we're utilizing our discretion and the tools given us by the legislature with HB 300 to peel away those cases that shouldn't go to the district court. As of this year, on average, the law came into effect in May 12th, I believe. We are on track to send 600 cases that would have been district court cases. Rather than send those to the district court, we send them to our county justice court as Class B misdemeanors. That results in revenue to the county of $414,000 in revenue it would not have had. And while our goal is not increasing revenue to Utah County, the result is increased revenue to Utah County. And so it actually costs us, when you factor that in, $333,500 to screen, and we have a cost savings of $241,000.
David, I think you're actually understating
I agree.
the amount of the savings of this approach.
Please, go ahead.
Well, I mean, because earlier I wanted to point out, you have it up here still, the 6.5 attorneys. We have someone from the Public Defender's Office here. I think this is important because sometimes we are told about the number of prosecutors that are in your office.
Right.
Well, if you have prosecutors who are screening, I would not count that, if I were a public defender's office, of kind of what my goal towards parity would be.
Right.
Secondly, the costs overall, not necessarily just to your office or the county, in terms of public defense, in terms of clogging the system, the cost of the courts, and everything else are not showing up here. And we
That's
all
right.
know that those are very real costs.
Absolutely. Let me discuss that for just a moment. First off, parity is essential. I spent a lot of years as a public defender, and I am a firm believer that everyone needs to have a vigorous public defense. However, not every criminal case has a public defender. About 75 or 80% of them do. Every case has a public prosecutor. And so, you know, to say that parity means same number of lawyers for same number, for same number of prosecution cases can't be accurate, right? The second thing is this, and that is that we hold the burden of proof. It is our job to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, and if we don't do that, we lose. I should say, the jury finds them not guilty. The defense has an opportunity to create a defense, but they have no obligation to do so. And so, it's a vastly different equation that way. The third is that we also provide advice to 23 police agencies. And so we take an active role in the investigation of that. But to go back to the cost model, yeah, I mean, it saves a lot of money not only in the county, but it unclogs things with the district court. It saves money with the treatment centers. It saves money at the jail, et cetera. It saves money all the way down the line.
Well, we're not even talking about the cost in society.
Absolutely,
And
that's the biggest cost.
That's a hard one to measure because you don't know, but jobs, opportunities that are lost when things get clogged up and thrown into a jail situation. That sometimes can't get recovered, or we start a cycle of maybe a family going down a poverty road.
That's right, and let me address that, at this juncture briefly. Among the most critical questions that we haven't even addressed yet, is in my office as county attorney, is what do we do with them after the guilty plea? That's going to be the focus of my next 2 years in office. What do we do to change this cycle? And I'll tell you, there's not a system anywhere that wakes up in the morning and says, thank you for trying to change me. Because when you look at, people who are in the system resist this change. Maybe coming from spheres, areas which you wouldn't necessarily expect. 600 cases that didn't go to the district court, that went to the justice court. A percentage of those, 25% of those, will be private cases. That means less revenue for the defense attorney who's not going to get that case. And so, it's a little bit like changing the tax code and trying to get the support of the CPAs and the tax lawyers to do it. Because everybody has their little part of the system from which they have benefited. And that's what makes this not only difficult, but also a very multi-year process. All right. Additional benefits of the new screening process. The screening process eliminates bias, applies laws, evaluates evidence, and uses collaboration and experience of the team. It creates more balance in serving to reduce plea bargains and restore the options of save our threatened jury system. And 3, our caseload and numbers are reduced, which result in balancing cost versus the benefit in the long term. Okay, any questions on the screening before I move on?
Well, there was one, I really appreciate these principles, and I know that 2020 has been a crazy year for all of us, and
Sure.
especially in the courts, trying to track this data. But to everything that we've just been saying, if in 2021 we can track those 600 cases and more data, that just helps tell this story even more than you're doing.
Absolutely. And let me segue to that. We, I know I can only say, this is the best money we spent so many times, right? But it was really money well spent for us to hire a time-limited employee, and hire a statistics student at BYU. We employed her to go through every case that we filed in 2019 and collect data on 35 different data points. So we can see and we can measure the effect in many different areas of what we're doing. It took her 5 months. It took her 5 months because one of the big problems of the criminal justice system is that everybody operates in a silo. And even inside the silo doesn't know what's going on. Because our process has been file every charge, file every charge, file every charge. We get through it and nobody ever follows up on anything as to what's gone on. And we are not in a position to reform the criminal justice system until we know what the criminal justice system is really doing. And one of the fortunate circumstances of COVID is the CARES Act money, because our former case management system, which was Justware, we were notified early in the year that they would no longer support that as of June of next year. Several $100,000 to change that. Well, because the CARES Act money allowed us, and we were working from home, and now we needed an internet-based system for COVID, we were able to upgrade our case management system. But what we're going through right now is we are building a new case management system that has trying to strike the balance of collecting all the data we need while not collecting data that we don't need, and trying to find that balance. But every lawyer will be tasked, and every employee of the office will be tasked with the responsibility of data entry as they pass through it, because we will become, by the end of year 2021, we will become among the most forward-thinking data collection agencies in prosecution across the country. Period. End of statement. We will be able to, and because it's the only way we're going to know how to get better. And so, again, I feel your support in this process, approving that, and I thank you for it.
And then the other question, were you going to talk about trials at all
Yes.
further on? Okay, I'll save my question about that.
Community services. Sadie Johnson, who is a 18-year veteran from the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office, came to Utah County, and we made her the Community Services Division Chief. She's a very experienced prosecutor, and I'm just going to very quickly.
So that's another attorney who isn't actively prosecuting cases?
This is an attorney that is not prosecuting cases.
Okay.
The pre-filing diversion program. The pre-filing diversion program was the first of its kind in the state, and it's designed for low-risk defendants who have zero to limited prior involvement in the criminal justice system. The goal is to give the offender an opportunity to assess the risk factors, what contributed to their criminal actions, make any victims whole, give back to the community as a consequence of their behavior without involving them in the criminal justice system. There is one attorney assigned and one legal assistant. And so that's another lawyer that the public defenders never see these cases because they're never filed in court. And there's several hundred of them. We're just ramping that up. We started small, and as we continue to refine what we do, we'll send more and more and more of these to the pre-filing diversion program. We'll start to include people that have criminal records, because it becomes a cost-saving mechanism for us, because we can change behavior so much more quickly. If we file the case and it gets sent over to the public defenders, or they get a private lawyer, that case will take 5 or 6 months before it gets a resolution. And by the time 5 or 6 months occurs, the defendant has long since forgotten what he or she even did. You know, the punishment, it's like kicking a dog 4 days after the dog uses the bathroom in your house. There's no cause or effect. And so we will start using the community services, the pre-filing diversion, to be able to find the people who are willing to acknowledge their crime, make a difference, allow a punishment to occur, and we can short circuit all of the court system process, because the benefit of this is, and the thing that allows us to do this is the statute of limitations. The traditional model of prosecution says we're going to rush to prosecute. Well, on a felony, you have 4 years to make that decision. Why not, if the person's not violent, say, let's hold back and see if we can change his behavior before we obligate prosecutors and public defenders and judges and probation officers? And why not do that before we put a brand of felon across somebody's forehead that 30 years from now we'll still be paying for?
And you have 4 years.
Because you have 4 years to do it. Right. And so, you know, part of our limitation, frankly, is that, again, we're building an airport at the same time we're landing and taking off planes. We don't have the resource to work with the defender, the participants in the program. You know, there's treatment issues, there's all sorts of things, but all of this eventually will flow together, because, quite frankly, I make this statement quite a bit, that there's nothing more socialistic in our society than criminal justice. We pay our money to the government, and we expect government to come up with the solution. Government is not the solution here. We have to innovate. We have to have broader thinking, rather than saying, okay, jail is our one tool. We need to come up with different solutions. And so our policy, which has been corroborated during COVID, this is another benefit of COVID, is we stopped jailing nonviolent offenders because of COVID. I've been preaching for a long time that we shouldn't jail nonviolent offenders. Only put those people in jail that are violent. Well, we've learned through COVID that society's wheels don't fall off necessarily because we're not putting these people in jail. And so our jail populations have decreased and decreased and decreased, and they will continue to decrease as long as I'm the county attorney, because we'll be finding, this is not being soft on crime, this is being smart with solutions, because we'll find alternative punishments that don't include incarceration. And that'll be a presentation for another day.
But it is one that we know your office has spent a lot of time reviewing, and
Yeah.
it's incredibly important.
It's
Gathering that data on a national basis of what has happened with some of these not going into the jail system is,
right.
I mean, if you still have a statistician, and just reviewing the national research, that's great. And I know another thing that you're passionate about is, it's been said that the best social program is a job.
That's right.
And if this pre-filing program allows people to continue holding a job, supporting a family,
Absolutely.
I'm pretty sure, regardless of where people's ideological response may be to what you're proposing and what you're planning, I'm confident the data will support.
It will. It will. And I will say I've spent the better part of 2 years trying to get to this point right here. And I haven't even addressed these issues. Now I have, Larry Weiss is my chief deputy. I've got Chad Grunander as my division chief in criminal. I've got Sandy Johnson in community service. I've got Dale Ayer in screening. They take and those are, by the way, former lawyers that never see a courtroom. And that allows me to focus my energies on solving this next problem. Okay.
Well, even in the sheriff's presentation, he acknowledged that the jail was significantly down, probably about a third or so of what it was last year. So,
Or more, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he in his presentation, he addressed that as well.
Right. Okay, mental health court. Mental health court is part of community services. It's a specialty court that seeks to identify defendants, where there's a nexus between an underlying mental health issue and the offense charged. The court seeks to integrate law enforcement and mental health providers into the defendant's long-term treatment plan as an alternative to extending incarceration. Participation in this program is usually 24 to 36 months. There are 2 attorneys and 1 legal assistant assigned to that, and that assignment is in addition to their other trial team assignments. But the reality is, you know, we have used as a society the criminal justice system as the stopping ground and the problem-solving mechanism for the mentally ill, and that's not the right place for it. And we have I believe, I don't have the numbers right here, and I could be wrong. Sandy will correct me if I get this wrong, but we have like 42 slots in mental health court. That and to put a mentally ill person through mental health court is the system's attempt at rectifying a problem that we caused. But once you put someone in mental health court, by necessity, they have a defense attorney, they have a judge, they have a probation officer, they have all these things that come with the trappings of the criminal justice system that we could eliminate if we did it on the front end once we identified the mental illness. Moving on.
So, sorry, so that's not, mental health court is not part of your office or the community services?
It is part of my office, but there are resources devoted to mental health court, drug court, veterans court, from the public defender's office, from the county attorney's office, from the court, from probation. We all have our little sliver of that.
Got it.
And so we have a mental health court, we have a drug court that does the same thing, and we have the veterans court to deal with the issues that are specific to veterans. Now, we also, in the community services, deal with victims, victim services. Nearly every one of our cases that isn't just a simple possession of drug cases has a victim. And quite frankly, one of our clarion call goals for 2020 and moving on to 2021 is to do a better job calling victims, communicating with victims. And we have currently 3 victim witness coordinators, 1 legal assistant. We have a volunteer program but that's in its infancy, because we recognize, number one, government doesn't have the money to always provide more victim witness coordinators. We also recognize, number 2, that what we need are people outside in the community who are motivated to help because they want to help victims, and so that'll be part of our future volunteer process. The Community Services Division also handles all the training, not only to the lawyers in this office, but also to all the law enforcement agencies across the county. And so every lawyer in the office who's a criminal lawyer is also assigned for training purposes for the law enforcement agencies. And they answer to Sandy Johnson for those responsibilities in the Community Services Division. The Justice Court is in our Community Services Division. We have 2 attorneys there and 1 legal assistant. The Juvenile Court is also in our...
So I guess that helps me clarify the last comment. When you say that, what you mean is you have people in your Community Services Division that are assigned to those courts?
Yes.
Or those programs?
That's right.
Not that really administering them is the responsibility of your office in any way?
No, we don't administer it. We're assigned to them. Now,
whereas the programs, the pretrial services, some of those other programs that are in your community services are actually administered by that department.
That's right. That's right. I'm going to tell you that slide is not accurate. I'm just looking at the numbers, so I'm going to move on. That slide's not going to be accurate either. What we're trying to demonstrate here is that justice court cases are moving up, because we are recognizing, we're trying to make the justice court the area for treatment rather than the district court. The district court's gonna be reserved for the serious crimes, for the more serious crimes that require a trial and a sentence, and a more traditional sentence. And so our cases in the justice court will continue to increase. Our cases in the pre-filing diversion program will continue to increase, and our cases in the district court will continue to decrease. And that's, you know, that's a model that is completely opposite what most prosecutors will say is fighting crime. Fighting crime for most people is say, well, let's just go file more charges. And that's just not we have 50 years of experience that says that doesn't work.
So are the pieces in place, I'm giving a little bit of a, kind of just trying to look forward since we had so many disruptions to the court system this year. Are the pieces in place for 2021 to, how confident are you that you will see that trend that you just described?
Well, if I can control it, I'm 100% confident. Let me tell you what I mean by that. And let me find out where I am here. There we go. Okay, here's what I mean by that. Consequences of COVID-19. These are things that most people in the general public don't even understand or think of. Most of us are thinking people are getting sick, we have to wear masks everywhere we go. People don't realize that we had that courts across the country, 45 or 46 courts across the nation, including Utah's Supreme Court, have completely suspended jury trials. All jury trials are suspended. That means there's no speedy trial. And what we're facing here is irreparable harm, the prospect of irreparable harm to the criminal justice system. We've gone, remember, the most important aspect of a plea bargain is that it be voluntary for the defendant, that it not be coercive, right? And one of the reasons why we've changed our charging practices, why we've changed our plea bargaining practices, is because we want the defendant to make an honest decision, straight up or straight down, whether he or she wants to take a plea bargain or go to trial. Well, when you don't have an outlet of a jury trial, there's added to it a coercive nature to the plea bargain when the defendant can say, well, I'm going to I have to take your plea bargain or I have to wait for jury trial. Now, that cuts both ways. What we're seeing is this. First off, we're seeing people in jail awaiting a trial because they can't get out of jail, but they can't get a trial. Secondly, we're seeing people whose lives are completely on, victims whose lives are on hold. You know, at 2 o'clock, I'm appearing in court, personally, to dismiss a case that has a victim because the trial got continued and there won't be a trial for another 2 years. And so I'm finding a resolution that will, you know, make the best of it, so to speak. So we're seeing people seriously damaged because their lives can't move forward. We're also seeing the opposite, where people who are perpetual players in the criminal justice system are gaming the system and taking the opportunity by saying, yeah, give me a jury trial for that. Rather than pleading guilty like they normally would, they won't plead guilty. They will kick the ball down the road, and that's sometimes specific by attorney. We have attorneys in the public defender's office that are very responsible in moving cases through, but we have some lawyers elsewhere in the system who will just simply say, you know what, I'm going to take advantage of this, and you know, my guy wants a plea bargain, a jury trial. That means that we can't see it for 2 years. Well, what the effect of that is that it completely gums up an already gummed up system, right? And so you have to ask yourself, as a county attorney, I have to ask myself, what's my responsibility here? I've charged over 1,100 people with crimes, none of whom have a right to a speedy trial. None of them will have a jury trial, and at least not anytime soon. And so And then, you know, it gets a little even more strange when you realize that if someone says, wait a minute, I had to plead guilty and it was not very voluntary because I didn't have any other option, who do they go to ask that that voluntary plea be vacated, or the involuntary plea? They go to the court. Well, the court's the one that created the problem by suspending jury trials. And so on many levels, this problem with the suspension of jury trials has the capacity to completely undermine the integrity and the credibility and the functionality of our criminal justice system, to the point that I sent a letter on September 2nd to the Supreme Court of Utah. And in the interest of time, I won't read you all of the 3-page letter. Happy to provide it to you, but for this public forum, I'd like to read some of it. I state, and these are, all of these are quotes from my letter, and I'm bouncing around. On May 11th, 2020, the Supreme Court of Utah entered an order suspending jury trials indefinitely. Indefinite, complete suspension of jury trials should send freedom-loving Americans into sheer panic. That it hasn't demonstrates how dangerously close we are to losing among the most essential liberties of our constitutional rights. Our founders certainly would not have allowed it. We need to keep in mind how critical the jury trial was to the founders' system of government. John Adams said, representative government and trial by jury are the heart and lungs of liberty. Without them, we have no other fortification against being ridden like horses, worked like cattle, and fed and clothed like swine and hounds. Alexander Hamilton remarked that the essential nature of the jury trial was the only principle upon which every delegate to the Constitutional Convention agreed. In recent decades, the jury trial has become less relevant in our criminal justice system. Plea bargains, not juries, resolve 99% of all criminal cases, and plea bargains shift power away from people and place it in the hands of prosecutors. Since the May 11th, 2020 Supreme Court order, I have accused nearly 1,200 individuals of felonies or Class A misdemeanors. Because of your order, their only option, along with the several thousand already pending defendants and victims when the order was issued, is to take the plea bargain offered or to have or put their life on hold for literally years while the court system seeks to unravel the backlog of jury trial suspension has created. And defendants are not the only Americans suffering because of your order. Victims as well must wait indefinitely for the resolution of their cases. Please keep us safe on the streets only to find their hard work bottlenecked and stopped by the judiciary. And then I say to them, I understand that the Supreme Court of Utah entered its order to avoid the spread of a terrible pandemic. I personally know the capacity of this virus to cause havoc in someone's life as it did in mine just a few short months ago. Yet I still believe that the risk of illness or even death does not supersede the constitutional duties to protect life and liberty. The court's job is not to protect us from illness. Rather, its job is to protect us from tyranny. I understand the court's rationale. Since the judiciary has the right to compel lay citizens into service, suspending the jury trial until COVID is at a manageable level prevents citizens from being infected through an act of governmental compulsion. And then I say, I'm sympathetic to the argument, but I find it unpersuasive. Jury service is an essential civic obligation because it protects our collective and individual liberty. It is among the most essential of all societal functions. Liberty demands that kind of sacrifice. It is a duty we each hold. We understood that collective duty when we compelled 2.8 million Americans to defend our values in World War I through the draft. We also understood it when we drafted another 10 million Americans into World War II, 1.5 million Americans into the Korean War, and 2.2 million Americans in the Vietnam War. Millions of Americans were compelled to die as their civic duty. And I say, against that backdrop of sacrifice, compelling a few citizens to attend an in-person jury trial is completely harmonious to our responsibility to our freedom. I go on and suggest other things here, but the reality is, I sent that letter a month and a half ago. and I got a response that said, "Thank you for your letter. We'll be in touch." And so our system continues to, and so here's what I've done. I've changed my plea bargaining policy. In significant ways, I won't get into the weeds here, but what I'm creating is a system and a caseload of the district. By the time COVID is finished, what you will see, I'm afraid, around the state, around the country, is a criminal justice system where the cases are so backlogged, nothing gets done. I view my responsibility as a county attorney and as a protector of our Constitution, as our freedom, that I have an obligation to say, okay, that just means that we're gonna reduce the number of cases we're gonna send to the district court. It means that we're gonna take cases that are in the district court that don't mean as much to us as having a jury trial, we're gonna get rid of them through plea or dismissal or some other way. Because when the curtain rises after COVID, we're gonna be ready to start trying cases. Now, what that means is, somebody asked me the other day, well, why haven't you furloughed all these lawyers? Because you're not trying cases. Well, the reality is, we still have to find solutions to those cases. We simply can't just say, okay, well, we're gonna sit around and do nothing. Society is depending upon us to go from a system that had a possibility of a jury trial to a system currently, hopefully it's not much longer, but a system that has no capacity for a jury trial. So we are settling 100% of our cases, and we're doing so in a way that seeks to avoid any coercion, any threat of inappropriate prosecutorial power, and when COVID lifts, had we furloughed lawyers, then we'd spend the next 2 years developing what we've spent the first 2 years doing.
Well, I gotta jump in here, because I was one of those that asked you that
Yeah.
question. So as I'm hearing this, then your goal is not to hit this backlog that seems to be jamming up and find some solutions along the way so that we don't hit this wall when this thing is finally lifted.
That's right. I mean, let me see if I understand you correctly. I mean, what we're doing is recognizing that the conveyor belt of cases hasn't slowed down. And when COVID lifts, it's not gonna slow down then either. And so what we have to do, in addition to having to clear out the district court pre-COVID to be able to try more cases, we have to find a way to dispose of these cases in a way that's responsible to the public during COVID. And so you're seeing us sending more cases to pre-filing diversion, and quite frankly, it reminds me of a time when I got a speeding ticket in San Jose, California, and I was guilty and I was speeding. And the officer sitting there writing a ticket, over the radio comes the call, there's an officer down. He said, sir, this is your lucky day. I gotta go take care of something that's more important than this, and he left, and just boom, he was gone. And I realized, okay, well, that's where we are in many instances. I will not throw out our constitutionally guaranteed process for the expediency of a few plea deals in COVID. Now, the flip side of that is this. If you're a dangerous person, if you're one of those 10%, I'm gonna have to keep you in jail until you get a trial. I'm gonna ask the court to be revoking your bail. You may sit there for a year and a half, but that's not a problem I created, it's just part of the balancing.
A significant reduction in that backlog, because you're not gonna eliminate it. It can't be eliminated, but it can be solved.
No, we with COVID, I think that depending how long this goes, but when the curtain rises on COVID, my goal is to have the entire backlog gone. Because we'll clear out the.
But you can't do that with the violent offenders, you're still
No.
gonna have to go through that
But
process.
the violent offenders are 10% of the system.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
Well, I mean, I respect the pragmatism and your whole approach here, that you're not just, some people think that you should just read the letter of the law that the
Right.
legislature provides and prosecute, but you're trying to think of the effects on the whole overall system and
Right.
feel like a steward along that way. And so when the circumstances change in this nature, I would expect that it would change your screening criteria
It does.
and the criteria and which punishment you think is applicable. You have to look at what's available.
That's right, absolutely, and I will point this, I mean, people like to, you know, people who are defenders of the former, I'll call it the former system, because it's a new system here now. It may be only a pinhead on the map, but it's gonna get bigger. Defenders of the prior system will say, well, the legislature created all these possibilities of enhancements. What they don't realize is the legislature also created a law that allows us to reduce it and charge it at a lower category if we don't feel like it merits it.
Yeah.
And there's provisions that allow us, if we think the conditions are too harsh, to reduce it. And so really what the legislature expects us to do is to be ministers of justice / fairness. Okay, I am gonna stick to my schedule here, for your benefit. I will say that along the way, currently,
Sticking to the schedule might be for your benefit too, David, just saying.
no, that's what I said. I said for your benefit and my benefit. Maybe that didn't come up. I mean, I gotta be in court in 15 minutes. We currently have 4,748 open cases in the district court. 2018, we had 240 cases per lawyer. 2019, with your help, we reduced that to 165 lawyers per case. Or, just the opposite, yeah. That's societal dysfunction right there. 165 lawyers per case.
I wanna be one.
That's right. 165 cases per lawyer. In 2009, and today we have 134. That's because we are going to try and get our caseload down further and further and further and further, because what we will do is try cases. We will get to a point where the public defender's office and the county attorney's office, as different and independent offices, have an obligation to be ready in one court to try one of 4 cases at a time. We'll stack these cases 4 deep, and we'll try cases. And you know, the continuances, the baloney that goes on in that district court, we will eliminate. And if we find the lawyers, you know, we know which lawyers are causing the problem. We're building cases against them. If they're ethical cases, if they're sanctioned cases, whatever they are, we will not be deterred in clearing out this backlog. We currently have 15 homicides. One of them, the bomb case, is occupying the full-time efforts of 4 of my prosecutors and 2 of my investigators. You know, that's a discussion for another day, but it's, you know, it's a huge drain on us, and it's a huge drain on the public defender's office. But it's that kind of, you know, it's the most violent, serious case, and I'm not gonna say any more of that, because I got in trouble last time I said something about it. We have 62 sexual assault cases pending on children and minors. We have 147 sexual assault cases with adults, 276 DUIs. To me, this is the dashboard of the most serious cases in our society. These are the cases that will not be thrown away. These are the cases that won't benefit from COVID. These are the cases where people will sit in jail until they get a trial, or they'll plead to something that is commensurate with their crime. Conversely, in 2019, we filed 796 drug possession cases in district court. We're on track to file 427 this year. we're filing fewer cases in the district court. Now, that affects everything, right? That affects the jail for incarceration rates, that affects the public defender's office, that affects my office. We're having to shift lawyers from the district court to the justice court, and legal assistants. As we shift our resources, everyone else is gonna have to shift as well. Now, moving forward, the last couple of issues. I spoke about the data and the statistics already, and so I'll forego that. We will become a leading force in data collection and data-driven decisions. We'll become a leading force in prosecution not only in this state, but in this country. And I'm grateful for the men and women in my office, both full-time lawyers, staff, anyone that's working on this, because it is a major, major shift. The other thing I want to bring up is that in the coming week or two, I will announce publicly the creation of a conviction integrity unit. The details of that I will reserve for when we make the announcement. But it will be a forum wherein people who feel like they were wrongly convicted can come and have their case heard by a group of people who are not associated with the office, but who have the experience and the training to make a determination on that. I believe it wholly appropriate that we create the conviction integrity unit in a time when our fellow citizens have no right to a jury trial. And so this is not only going to address issues in the past that people can come and say, I'd like my case reviewed, but this will be something that occurs now. And so, to sum it up.
Well, just before you sum it
Yeah.
up, I'm glad that you mentioned that in this. This is an open forum, of course, that work's out there. But it's been a long time coming, so I'm thankful that you're going down that path.
Well, it's something that I've committed to. Quite frankly, I speak in analogies often, and I feel like I inherited a very effective football team as the head coach that employs a running offense, and I'm a coach who's going to try and employ a passing offense, and everybody's under contract. And so we're having to learn new skills, we're having to learn new ways, we're having to become more flexible. And you overlay that with the fact that I took over an office that nearly 100% of the office opposed my election and supported my opponent. That has had its share of growing pains. We've also, but I will tell you that I will call him my former opponent, Chad Grunander, because he's my criminal division chief. There's been no one in this process that has been more appropriate, more mature, more stand-up than Chad Grunander. My hat's off to him for his willingness to work at making this system a cohesive and a better system. And I will say this in closing, that I have learned so much in the last nearly 2 years in office, and it's largely a labor of love for me, and love is hard. It's painful for everybody. The changes I'm making are painful for some. Their responses to me sometimes doesn't feel real good, but we are working together for the public good. We've seen changes in our office. We've held people accountable in ways that they weren't accountable before. We lost 4 lawyers in the last 8 months to misconduct issues. That's part of my effort at building a public trust where people can understand that while we're not perfect, we certainly hold ourselves accountable to a standard that if you do something that violates the public trust, then you're going to lose your opportunity to be a prosecutor in this office. And you know, it is a real pleasure to work with the investigators in my office. It's a real pleasure to work with the lawyers and staff in my office. I've learned so much from law enforcement in Utah County, the sheriff and the police chiefs. And quite frankly, it's a real pleasure to work with the three of you on the county commission and the other elected officials. But thank you for the opportunity to serve as county attorney, and I say that to the residents of Utah County that are listening. And I hope that we can do our very best in the coming year to not only build your trust, but to create a better system. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask a question about the jury trials real quick? That we
Yes.
need to? You know, because I really like the principle that you started with when you're going through your presentation, that you have to consider the cost on society and the cost to the system.
Right.
And so, in some ways, a trial, kind of really pushing hard on having more trials, can gum up the system more, create more cost to the system.
Yeah.
And yet, you've spoken eloquently to the founders, you know, why that's so important. But I was just curious if that has, you know, because as you've made some of these changes, it kind of filters out in different ways. And I'd like to hear it from your own mouth, because what I heard, I didn't hear that so much in this presentation, that there's this incredibly hard push for trial. I heard more, you know, plea agreements are okay if they're not coercive, if it's not pressure, if you're not, you know, overcharging. What's your, maybe respond to that?
Absolutely. You know, I remember when I heard President Barack Obama campaign on closing Guantanamo. And after he became president, he didn't close Guantanamo. And I believe that the reason for that is that once he was president and sitting in that chair, he understood a need for that. And he was privy to information to which he wasn't privy before. Now, the statements that I have made publicly about the need to return to jury trials are all true, every one of them. But as we have gone through this process and have charged people differently, and have redefined our policies in a way that are a little more focused on community protection. What we've seen is that our focus is still on trying cases, but anyone that thinks that we're going to try 100% of our cases is fooling themselves. And the reason for that isn't because we're going to plea bargain cases. It's because, you know, first off, let's define what a plea bargain is. To me, a plea bargain is the reduction of charges that were filed in order to secure a plea. A plea bargain is not, you plead guilty to the charge and we'll give you a recommendation for what the sentencing is. I don't think that is a plea bargain, right? And so,
The latter, you're more comfortable with.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, because we're charging them correctly, what will happen is that I will predict that 3/4 of our defendants will plead guilty. Because they see that we're charging them with what they feel most comfortable, that they're conduct.
Especially if those sentencing notes that you talked about earlier during the screening
Absolutely.
come to, you know, they come to agree, and their attorneys, that that is the right resolution.
Right. And so, you know, we are moving in absolute, with absolute certainty that the founders were right, that we need to have a system that is where prosecutors don't govern it, and where citizens make those determinations. But as we change our practices as prosecutors, as we file fewer cases, as we find more solutions for the mentally ill and the disabled and the addicted, we will absolutely not gum up the system, because the system will be able to handle it. And so, yeah, I have stopped talking about gotta have more jury trials. We don't try cases for the sake of trying cases. We try cases when the evidence that the state has disagrees with what the belief of the defendant, what the defendant did. And then we let citizens decide that. And because we're charging this more appropriately, that diminishes the need. That make sense?
It does make sense. I appreciate that clarification.
So thank you. And look at that, it is 1:59.
Wow. Take a small break.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
Okay, we are continuing on in our series of budget workshops, and next we are moving to the Treasurer's Department, so we turn the time over to Kim Jackson.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. I also have Carrie McConnell, who's the Chief Deputy Treasurer, here as well from the Treasurer's Office. The mission of the Utah County Treasurer's Office is to faithfully receive all money directed by law to be collected and protected, applied correctly, invested properly, distributed timely, and provide an account as required by law while maintaining the highest level of customer service. Most of the duties that we have in the Treasurer's Office are prescribed by statute, and we've listed some of them here on the slide: to bill and collect real property taxes, receive and collect personal property taxes. And I might just note, the reason bill is not up there is the Assessor's Office actually bills the personal property, and we receive and then are charged to collect any delinquent balances. And we're the only Treasurer's department in the state of Utah that has been tasked with collecting personal property taxes. It's usually the assessor. Distribute taxes to the taxing entities by the 10th of the following month. We have a hard deadline by statute that whatever we collect in a month has to be distributed out to all of the entities by the 10th of the following month. We monitor cash flow and maintain balances in the various county bank accounts. We ensure that there's money in the bank account to cover payroll, which is critical, of course, and as well as the other checks that we issue. We process refunds of overpaid property taxes. We publish a listing of delinquent taxes at year end. We are charged to invest the county funds. We reconcile the tax accounts and provide monthly statements to the commission. And we receipt and deposit funds from the various county departments. Any monies that's received by other departments within the county, the health department, the jail, sheriff's office, they'll enter it in the cash receipt system that goes through the auditor's office, but then bring the funds to us, and we compare those to the cash receipts in the system and then make the deposit in the bank. Keep good internal control and separation of duties. This is our organization chart. We have 9 people in the department. We've split it into 2 groups, basically: those charged specifically to collect on personal property, and then those that their primary duty is real property collections. We obviously cross over. We're a small department, so in the crunch time, which we're heading into right now, those that are working in personal property will help us on the real property collection efforts. And vice versa, in the summertime when we're not as busy with real, they can help on personal property. Here's some of our statistics that come from 2019, because we haven't completed 2020 yet, but we thought we'd give an indication of the amounts of money that flow through the Treasurer's Office. About 190,000 tax notices were mailed, 442 million of current real property taxes were collected, 36 million of personal property taxes collected, 31.5 of prior year taxes. Those are delinquent taxes that have been paid during the year. 8 million in Greenbelt, which we kind of watch that number as development happens. We kind of like to see, if that's increasing, which it has been. Total taxes and fees collected in 2019 is $551 million.
Sorry to jump in, but just for my own clarification on the Greenbelt taxes collected, are you talking about Greenbelt taxes in the sense that they are still on Greenbelt, or are you talking about a combination of those that are on Greenbelt and those who have paid 5-year back tax? Or is it just a 5-year back tax?
Just a 5-year back tax.
Just a 5-year back tax.
Yeah. So total $551 million comes through the Treasurer's Office for the taxes and fees. That would include all of those categories above. $347 million were collected electronically, which, as we'll get to a little bit later, we're really trying to push people to pay us electronically. Our real property tax collection rate in 2019 was 96%, and we handle $34 million in cash receipts from the various county departments. That's how much money we get from those other departments that we then deposit. This,
Can I ask you a question?
Sure, you bet.
On the 96%?
Yes,
That's pretty typical. I mean, it might go up and down a little bit here and there.
yes, it's
But
very typical.
ultimately, it turns out to be 100% after you count the 5 years period.
On real property, that's
On real
true,
property.
yes, because we have a method of collecting after the 5 years is up.
You know, have you seen anything on this year? Do you see us down a little bit on that? Do you see us down below 95% on that? I'm just wondering how that's gonna look.
It's really too early to tell.
Yeah.
You know, we're just sending the tax statements out now, until we start getting payments in, and really until we probably do our final reconciliation with the 750,
Yeah.
we won't really know what that percentage is, so.
And Commissioner, the nice thing about just knowing what maybe 1 year of the collection rate is, in that rate calculation, they average that 5-year collection percentage, so that kind of evens out those peaks and valleys.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And so you look and say, wow, we had 96 last year, but what were the last 4 prior years to that? So part of the tax rate calculation includes an adjustment over for a 5-year collection average. But this has been some good years, though, last couple of years. Have probably been some good 94, 95%, 6-year, which helps, you know, for another 5 years if you would coming back off that.
Right. Yeah.
This slide shows the types of payments that have come into the office. The big blue area there are payments that we've processed in office. And as we'll get to a little bit later, that's the area we're really targeting to see if we can't, you know, get them to come in electronically or...
That is surprising to me how large of a chunk
Yeah,
paid in office.
yes. We still get a lot of businesses on the personal property that are writing checks and sending them in to us, but as we'll talk a little bit later, we just opened it.
Sorry, so does that include a check
Yeah.
Yes,
that's mailed?
Cash and check, mail or in office.
Oh, okay, got it.
but also if you look over at the gray box, the lock box, when we send out the tax statements, the lockbox processes most of the checks at tax time during our tax season, but for personal property and people paying monthly and some people paying delinquent taxes would then mail a check directly into our office.
Does that include, an escrow payment that comes from those who hold the mortgage?
No, those are gonna be typically the wire, payments,
Okay.
mortgage payments, which is the brown
Yeah.
color. Those are typically wired to us because they're the big mortgage companies that provide that service, and because they're so large, they'll actually go out into our system and pull the amounts due and then wire the funds to us right before the deadline,
Right.
which helps us a lot because it's an electronic payment and it's automated into the system.
So the hands don't have to touch it as much.
We don't,
It's just-
that's correct.
Yeah.
So that's really why we want to focus on that big blue area, is the more we can move over, the more efficient I think we can become and the more automated we can become. E-check payments, number 4, that's an area that we hope really grows, and that's one of our goals. We've made the e-check payment free for taxpayers, and that was one of my goals coming into the office, is if we could provide a free method of paying electronically, we would really like to do that, and you guys allowed us to do that, which we appreciate. Credit card payments, again, they're a small slice just because there are extra fees associated if you pay with a debit card or a credit card. And then bill pay, most of us know what that is. You go in and set up a payment through your bill pay, through your financial organization, and it comes to us. We've automated that more and more, though, with the service that we're using with Wells Fargo, so we don't have to touch those as much anymore either, so.
Is that chart, no, I'm not gonna ask that question. It was just a question on home ownership outright versus mortgage. Never mind. Let's.
We've got a slide that'll
Okay.
give you some more information regarding that. These, right here is our 2020 goals and results. I'll just go down through them, there's only 3. Our goal was to push for more electronic tax payments by providing an easy process at little to no cost, which we kind of alluded to, that we have a free payment method. We wanted to increase the e-check tax payments by 20%. We're not through the year yet, so we don't have really any statistics that I can give you because we got to go through the busy season and then we'll be able to provide more information. The second one, we want to move away from paper tax notices by providing a process that is convenient at less cost. Our goal is to convert 3,000 paper tax notices. So far, believe it or not, this year, we're at 3,444. But that's a little misleading in the sense that because this is the first year, we already had about 5,000 taxpayers who had signed up under our old system. They have to go back in and sign up under the new system. So some of those, it's low-hanging fruit's going to happen. And we've got another mailing that's going to go out with our tax notice that we hope will bump that number up even more for this year. So our third goal related to personal property accounts, we're shooting for a consistent reduction in the personal property accounts through our ongoing collection efforts. The real metric that we want to measure is we want to keep delinquent personal property taxes below 12. That's where we want to start. We ultimately want to end up around 5 or less. But I like that metric. The problem is when we went to measure it, we found out we do not have a good reporting. We don't have a good report right now that will really measure that the way we want it to be measured. So we're going to work with IT to see if we can't get that developed and move back to that metric. But in the meantime, we were able to reduce personal property taxes by 30%. Some of that's due to write-offs. Some of it's due to our collection efforts. But I really like the metric of keeping it below a certain percentage and reducing that every year. That tells me that we are seeing, results from our actions.
And Kim, that's one area, that I think you're doing a great job of trying to balance it. It's a tough one. I remember a couple of years ago, we were having a problem with chasing pennies with dollars, because we had it set so low. I think it was set so low in the sense that, I think if it was $5, we're still chasing paper and everything else. And then I think we adjusted that. Didn't we adjust that to some other number? But anyway, my point is that I appreciate that kind of look at the balance of how we go after these and try to, if there's one area that I think maybe you can kind of help massage this going a little better in a better direction, it'd probably be that one. The rest of them I see that you're moving in that direction and doing a great job. And you are in this one too, but I'd sure like to see, maybe some more faster responses to it. And there's multiple hands in this. It's not like you guys totally control the whole thing, and I get that.
Yeah.
But if there was a way that we could streamline that a little better, be a little bit more consistent with it. But I know you're addressing it and you're looking at it and trying to get those metrics down.
Yeah, we really would like to, because as you know, with personal property, it disappears. And you can't, it's hard to collect on it.
Or crosses the line.
And that's why you have to stay current with it. As soon as it goes delinquent, you really need to be on top of it, or otherwise it gets away from you and you can't collect it. So that's why that metric's so critical for us. What's new in 2020? We're going to be sending out a new tax notice, which we'll show you in just on another slide coming up. It's got color, and it actually shows in graphic form where the tax dollars are going, which I think we've tried to emphasize as a county, that because we send out the tax bill, we don't necessarily receive all of that money. It goes to different places, and we think that'll be helpful to show that graphically. We're no longer including a payment coupon on those taxpayers that have an escrow account or their mortgage is paying it. We used to send out, and we'll show you in a minute, one 8.5 by 11 statement that always had a coupon on the bottom, so it would go to taxpayers whether they were paying or not. It resulted in some overpayments that then is a lot of work for our office to deal with those, so. We're also gonna see some cost savings at the end of the year because we're gonna mail out a postcard for delinquent tax notices rather than a full page in an envelope with a stamp and so forth, so we'll save money there. We've also implemented auto bill pay, and I really like this because we used to do it manually, and there are still some taxpayers, believe it or not, that'll come in and do it by paper, but we have an automated method now that you can sign up, and the system is designed that it'll take last year's tax bill, it'll divide by 10 and charge that monthly, starting in February, goes all the way through October. That's 9 payments. And then in November, they find out what the final tax bill is, compare it to what you've paid, and we'll take out of your account the final amount to pay your tax in full. So it's really convenient. We just got to let people know it's there and help them get signed up. But it doesn't get much more convenient than that, or easy for taxpayers if they want to pay monthly rather than annually.
Kind of like the quarterly estimations that you do with businesses for your tax basis, but you have to kind of adjust it when you get closer to it because it doesn't always.
Yeah, we do not know what that tax amount's gonna be at the first of the year because of the rate setting process. We don't know that until probably late July, and it's not even in our system and calculated until, the end of September. So that's why we have to estimate it, but it's usually pretty close. So, and you know, that final payment is either gonna go up or down depending on what it takes to pay that off, but I really like that feature that we have now. We can now take payments over the phone. It's an automated system. You know, you listen to a menu and you follow it, but there are some people that still prefer to pay over the phone if they can, so we'd have that option if they'd like.
So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
This is kind of interesting because, you know, on a mortgage payment, you're paying in every month, right? That goes into an escrow for the taxes in the end. And anyway, I always thought, that's great, they get to use that money wherever they use it. I don't know if they use it, I don't know if they invest it somewhere, or if they put that money in some interest-bearing account all that year, and then they finally pay it off.
Right.
But this right here, I wonder if the mortgage companies would be against this. If you set it up so it's just automatically taken out, would it automatically take out and come to you, or does it just build up over the year and then you get paid off?
It does, but the mortgage companies aren't going to be upset because these are for the people that already have their mortgages paid off, and they're the ones that have to end up paying the tax bill.
Yeah, so you could set it up the other way. I guess the mortgage companies wouldn't allow that, would they? Because they want you to make.
Well, that's what their escrow account is doing.
I've had mortgages with that escrow account.
So you've actually said, don't pay it, I'll pay the tax on it?
There are some loans like that, yeah, that's true, that don't require an escrow account. And back in the day, you used to earn a lot more money on your money
Yeah, exactly.
than you do in today's world, so
0.1%.
there was definitely more incentive to do it earlier, you know, before than it is now, just because the rates are so low. We already touched on the free check and the numbers that are signed up for email notices. Due to COVID, we are planning on putting a drop-off box in the parking lot. You're probably familiar with that south parking lot, and they've got the cooling center, that building there that's in the middle. On the south side of that, they cleared out the shrubs, and there's actually going to be the election drop-off is going to be there, and our payment drop-off box is going to be there, just to try and incent people not to come into the office and drop their payments off, and they can do it in their car, so it's convenient. And then the other box you see there is for a drop-off box that will also be outside of the offices. They're going to drill a hole actually outside into our office, so that drop box will be right inside our office, that they can then, if they walk up and maybe the office is closed, they could still drop it in there and it'd be safe and secure. Just for everybody listening, there will be cameras on these boxes as well, so, and it will say checks only, no cash. So anyway, and then, we've changed our lockbox provider to Zions Bank because Wells Fargo has taken their lockbox services out of state. We were a little uncomfortable in having our taxpayers mail their tax payments to another state. So we went with Zions Bank, who, it'll still have a Utah address on it, so that's a change this year as well. This is what the old tax statement used to look like. Words completely on the back side, numbers on the front, and you can see that coupon on the bottom. That went to everybody, whether they had a mortgage payment or not. And a little hard for some people to kind of dig out where their taxes are going, really. Some people that are accountants, no problem, but others might have a hard time saying, oh, I just think all this is going to the county. So now, this is what we're sending out this year. Tom, if you want to, thanks. As you can see there, this is our 8.5 by 14. You can see there on the left-hand side the pie chart that shows the breakdown, and we split it into 4 areas: schools, city, county, and other districts, special service districts. So now they're, and we did just hand the customized reports to the commissioners so they can see personally what theirs is gonna look like. So you guys are the first to receive your tax bills this year. But anyway.
I'm smiling, Kim.
I can't tell through the mask. I know, it's...
The chart's all great, but whoever that commissioner was, who raised the county portion of the tax.
You had to go there. Anyway, this, by the way, has had a lot of research done on how to present it, not necessarily by our county, but by a county in Arizona that put a lot of work into, how should we design a tax form that is pleasing to the taxpayer, give them information. As you can tell, we only put on the front the really basic, necessary information that we feel like the taxpayer needed to see. And then on the back, you have all the detail. If you want to dig into the numbers, you want the detail, you just flip it over and it's all there. And by the way, we did a 2-year comparison on the back of the tax notice, which has not been done before. So you can actually see what you did last year and what the current year is going to be. But then on the front, you can immediately see where the tax dollars are going based on the pie chart. It shows the total amount due. It gives you a little detail of what makes it up, and then the coupon on the bottom. I don't know if you have any questions on this form or format, or we're kind of excited to see how it will be taken, what questions we'll get, comments, but others that we've talked to, it's been very positive from the taxpayer. We'll go to the next slide, which is just a shorter version. This is the version that will actually go out to those that have a mortgage, that have an escrow account, and that the mortgage company will pay. And as you can see, there's no payment coupon on the bottom. And if you see to the right of the pie chart, we have a message there. That weight is in red. You may not need to pay these taxes because, and then we list your specific mortgage company has requested your information and may pay the taxes for you. And then we ask them if they have questions to contact their mortgage company directly, because there are cases where our information shows the mortgage company is going to pay, but that could change between when we send out the notice and when they get it. things could change where they're not paying it, so we don't wanna say definitely they're gonna pay it or guarantee they're gonna pay it, but they may, and if you have any questions, just check with your mortgage company to make sure. Again, the graphic on the front and the details on the back. As you'll see, right under the 2020 tax notice, which, there's kind of an ad there for e-notices. That's also gonna be on every statement to try and educate people that would really love them to sign up for e-notice, save trees, and so forth. You go to the next slide. This is the actual insert that is going, this went, by the way, with your valuation notice. I don't know if you noticed it when you got yours, but, we're working in conjunction with the clerk auditor when they send out the valuation notice to get people to sign up. So they'll get their valuation notice electronically too if they sign up, as well as the tax notice. And so we're gonna send out the same thing and hoping that we'll get more people that'll sign up and convert to the e-notice. By the way, once they convert, it keeps a copy of that tax bill. It's there for as long as they have the account, so if they wanna go back and look at past years, they can. Once they get so many into the system, it'll keep track of tax notices from year to year. So this will go out as an insert, and then because of COVID and because we're really hoping to keep as many people from coming in to pay in the office, go to the next. This is again, an insert, a third of a sheet that will go out with all the tax statements. Stay safe, stay home, pay remotely. We have the 4 different ways that they can pay, which coincides with what is on the tax notice itself. Now, on the back side, we say if you must pay in person, please try to wear a face mask. Honor physical distancing. And of course, we give our phone number if they have any questions or whatever, but we're really trying to emphasize, due to COVID-19, that there's so many other ways to pay electronically. You can mail it, you can drop it off in our drop boxes, and of course, all the electronic methods, and again, by phone. So, a lot of options for people to pay besides having to come into the office. This is kind of comparison with the other counties and where we are on a budget per parcel. You can see there that as the second largest county, we're right in line with being the second highest amount there, but we're more down towards the smaller counties than we are. And I think overall you can see that in 2020 and 2021 we're actually bringing that cost per parcel or budget per parcel down, which is what we want to continue to do as we use technology and as we convert more and more. In a moment, you'll kind of see how much postage costs our department. That's the real expensive part of sending out tax notices is not really the printing, it's the postage. Do you have any questions on this at all?
No, I mean, that's helpful. I mean, I was kind of, for a moment I asked myself why a per parcel metric makes sense, since you're not necessarily assessing that parcel, but it comes down to the notice.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's just, the number of notices is really what's driving.
And that's where the cost is. Of course, we have to deal with additional, parcels as they come online, but yeah, if we can drive down the cost of postage, because a lot of the other stuff is harder to control, but we think if we can convert to e-notices, that postage amount, and if you go to the next slide, I think we'll be able to see, here's a breakdown of our 2020 and 2021 budget, and you can see, personnel is the highest cost, then our internal service funds, what they're charging us, and then you got postage. So, that ranking, it's third highest, and that's literally to send out all of those tax notices and the delinquent notices that you do at your end.
Yeah, but I mean, a big chunk of your personnel, right, is really just the cost of having a treasurer's office.
Right.
Right, all of your statutory duties,
Yes.
And so that doesn't necessarily scale up from here, right? If we were to add an enormous number of parcels over the next few years, you would expect our postage and our notices to go up.
Yep.
But your administrative support,
Would not.
you don't feel like it doesn't need to scale.
We don't. In fact, we've been asked if we need more office space, which obviously would translate to more people, but we don't anticipate needing any additional staff or office space, just because we think we can utilize technology that'll help offset the growth that we'll get in increased parcel county grows.
Great.
And I think more and more people are getting more comfortable with electronic payments, and I think that'll grow just naturally too over the years as we move forward. These are our 2021 requests and goals. We still have the 3 goals that we've set in the past. We'd still like to push those because they're multi-year goals that, like on the paper tax notices, we anticipated about $3,000 a year so we can get to that break-even point of the investment to go with this new company. Our asks are really just operational, copier, scanners, and an information desk computer, and the question might come up, why is that not capitalized? And it's kind of a unique situation that when Teresa came over, that position used to report to the IT department. They don't capitalize their own equipment, and so there was no capitalization. When they finally caught it and gave it to us, we now have a computer that was supposed to be replaced last year, that there's no capitalization. So they told us, if you can get it capitalized, then we'll get it replaced. So
One of my goals is to work on getting the equipment recapitalization, and equipment replacement programs set up for the county, so these copiers and things like that.
yeah, that would really be helpful. We'd love to see, I would anyway, copiers that could be capitalized so we don't have, a large amount. But the total asks are under 10,000, even, if you go to the next slide, unless there's any questions on this. Is that it? That's the last one. Anyway, with that total amount and our current budget compared to last year's, we're still below our 2020 budget for 2021, so. Again, not a big department, not a lot going on as far as budget requests, but.
Thank you. I mean, visiting with you, going through a lot of these numbers before, I appreciate that you're working on those goals, and I can see them coming about. They don't always land it perfectly into what you're trying to accomplish, but a lot of them are headed in the right direction.
Yeah, we can't get too creative in the treasurer's office. We're statutorily driven, and we don't want to be too creative, or we'll end up in a different spot that you had your meetings on prior to us, and.
Yeah, we don't want too much.
But yeah, I think there are.
That's why we keep your copy machines, minimum level,
Right.
because we don't want really high quality.
You don't want them to have too many capabilities, right?
Well, thank you. This is really helpful.
Okay, you're welcome.
Any comments on the phone?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Kim. Very helpful. Great job. I really like the new look of the notices. They look great.
Hey, if you want to drop by, we've got a tax notice we can give you.
Much easier to read, so.
Just what you want, right?
Yep. I honestly, given the quality of service that we deliver from the county, it's actually something I am happy to pay, because I think the county government delivers what government's supposed to.
Yep, I agree.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
We will now adjourn.
I'm really